Hello everybody, it's Christy Friend Beauty. I recently did a poll on my Instagram and asked what you guys wanted to see, and everyone said that they wanted to see mental health stuff. We're gonna get into my journey and some things that have helped me over the years, some different types of therapy, different vitamins, types of physical health that help, and giving yourself a lot of grace. I'm gonna get really vulnerable with you guys, but I have no problem being honest and open about my journey now. Probably about, I don't know, maybe like 5 to 7 years ago, I probably would not have been at a place where I could share a lot of this. So I'm really proud of myself for how far I've gotten, for how far I've come, and the work that I have put into bettering myself and to break generational cycles and dysfunction. So without further ado, let's get into it. So giving you a brief outline, so my family has a pretty vast history with mental illness. Things that like my dad struggled with for the majority of my life, also like my aunt, and over time my mom and my sisters kind of have struggled with similar things as well. I won't get into the details of that because it's their journey and it's their story to tell. So, but definitely learning from their experiences has helped me figure out my own path. The age that I feel like my mental health really started, I can remember feeling like, I guess like suicidal, or like life wasn't worth living when I was probably in like 5th or 6th grade. And I should preface with this statement that I give my family and my parents in particular a lot of grace, which has taken me a lot of time to work on forgiveness with them. And if you feel like it's done, it's not. Like, it's always going to be a process. It's always going to be a process of forgiveness for especially those closest to you that have hurt you in the past. My home life was really dysfunctional. It was, well, I guess whose home life wasn't dysfunctional as a child in some way or another, but there was a lot of substance abuse in my house. And both of my parents at some point or another struggled with substance abuse and addiction. So kind of growing up in a household that you were kind of always like walking on eggshells at the time, and just really swallowing a lot of feelings, and not really wanting to be a burden, and not really wanting to use your voice a lot. That was a big part of my childhood. Just a lot of fighting, a lot of like chaos between my parents. So just a lot of like a sinking feeling and just feeling anxiety at a really young age. We moved practically every other year, so there wasn't a whole lot of stability, and there wasn't a lot of control on my part as a child. To have no real escape from feeling inadequate and feeling less than constantly. I would say that the real like hardcore age of manifestation probably hit more so in high school, and I didn't really realize it until one of my close friends had kind of pointed it out to me. She's like, you know, I'm really concerned about you, and you just cry all the time, and like you sleep all the time. Like, you're not, I used to be a dancer, so I stopped coming to dance classes. I just like stopped being involved in theater, stopped being involved in practically everything. And at that time, I was probably about 15 or 16. My parents had finally divorced after separating about 4 times. So there was just a lot happening. But really, I feel like my actual like anxiety and depression came to fruition around puberty. So high school was a really, really hard time for me. I would say that I had more depression in high school and eating disorder issues in high school than I did in college. When I got to college is when I really felt the weight of anxiety and pressure to perform. Like my grades were really slipping, and I'm somebody that's had a hard time with school anyway, so I would have constant panic attacks. Like my best friend and roommate at the time in college it was like an every other day thing, like calming me down from a panic attack. I also gave my parents a lot of grace for how they didn't really know what to do with me at the time. Like I wasn't necessarily like a problem child. Like I didn't get into a lot of trouble, but it was just something that was like they had no idea how to manage me or help me. And so they vastly over medicated me. Being on an antidepressant, anti-anxiety, a muscle relaxant, just way too much medication at 16. It was to the point where I was on one extreme. I was like, basically the only time that I was awake was to go to school. And I would come home at 3:30, sleep until the next morning, and then do it all over again. So from that extreme to, and crying all the time, inconsolable, crying, just upset, and then to feeling absolutely like nothing. So I remember one day my mom came in the kitchen, and it was a few weeks of me being on this medication. She's like, so, how are you feeling? And I just had like dead eyes. I just felt like such a zombie. I was just like, I don't know. It's like, do you feel better? I was like, I don't know. Do you feel worse? I don't know. Just completely empty. I couldn't cry. Like I was completely inhibited of feeling anything. So I had to learn over time how to find the balance and the happy medium. In 2011, I actually attempted suicide. So I had just gotten to the point where I was just done. I was just crying. I was just so drained of life, and I was so done. And every time I would try to just go a little bit deeper, just be done. I just wanted the pain to end. I just wanted the struggle, the constant struggle and the constant strife to just be done. I can't explain it other than just like this voice that was just like, you don't have to do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. And after a few hours of me trying to complete this task, to me that was another failure. I was like, well, I can't even kill myself, right? like I'm failing at doing that too. After talking with my therapist who I was going to at the time, she actually admitted me to a behavioral health center, and it was there that I received like some group therapy. Still not an ideal place to go. It's an absolutely terrifying experience, but it might have been necessary for me at the time. One good thing that I could say came out of me going to a behavioral health center was being assigned to my therapist, who I was with for years and years and years after that. I had struggled in the past to find a therapist who I could openly talk to and who I felt safe with, and I'm really grateful that I was assigned to her, because then she opened up a whole other realm of therapy, which is called EMDR, which I'm going to get into here in a second. After I had first seen her, I worked through leaving my now ex-husband and worked through some of the trauma of my childhood and started just making healthier life changes. I think I came to the realization that nobody is going to get me healthy but me. It's something that takes a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of grace. Keep in mind your overall goal and your perspective, that it's like the cycle breaks with you. The dysfunction, the chaos, everything that breaks with you when you take step by step by step by step to heal yourself and to heal your mind. And by doing that, your family heals, your children heal, their children's children heal. It's a big deal. So when you think of the perspective of like, oh, I'm not just improving my own quality of life, I'm improving my children, and I'm improving generations from now by drawing the line in the sand and saying no more addiction, no more chaos, no more dysfunction, no more mental illness. Like, that's not to say that you won't still have struggles, but you have to be willing to help yourself. Nobody is going to do that work for you. And it's difficult and it's hard. I promise you that there are brighter days ahead if you can just trudge through and do the work. So now you guys have kind of a brief overview of my struggle and kind of some of the things that I dealt with. And now I want to talk about some of the things that helped me to get to where I am now, which is medication free and a more controlled grasp on my mental health issues. So one really big thing that helped me was getting into EMDR. If you're unfamiliar with EMDR, it stands for eye movement desensitization. That's a fun word to say. And reprocessing. EMDR is an 8-step or 8-session psychotherapy. I'm gonna post a link to it in the bottom of the video today so you guys can look into it a little bit more in depth, because I feel like I could do an entire separate video on what it is and how it works. But essentially what it does is allows over time things that happen to you or certain traumas that happened no longer hold an involuntary emotional response or physical response. All of us have trauma. We all have our shit. We all have the things that we go through, but it's important that we are all processing it and in a way that is healthy and not going to essentially infect the lives of those we love, because that trauma can manifest itself into a poison into our relationships. As an example, the way that I got into EMDR was I actually had a date rape situation. I didn't realize what had actually happened to me until about 9 months later. I had literally like blocked it out, and my body and my mind was like trying to tell me what had happened, and I was having like panic attacks literally every day. I was having like really horrible PTSD during like intimacy with my boyfriend at the time. And so I had talked with my therapist about it, and she suggested EMDR for me. So what we had gotten down to was the events of that evening and what transpired, and over time, as I would remember things or things would come up, it's normal to have almost like a physical reaction even. Sometimes I would feel nauseous, or I would feel like instantly feel panicked. But over time with therapy and doing this process, I can now talk about it, and I can now remember it or reflect on it without feeling emotional, without feeling any negative sense of self, but instead having compassion for my abuser and also having empathy for myself. Guys, you come to check on me? Thank you. See my dogs. Pets are really good for mental health too, for anybody wondering. They keep you busy, and it's just something you can take care of. Another thing that's really helped me is having a solid support system. It really took my family some time to figure out how to be an ally to me, and also how to navigate like their own mental health issues as they came over time. Deep down, I think I felt a little bit vindicated, like, hello, welcome, join me in the struggle of my entire life. When I was in high school, my family just didn't really like talk about it. Like, we never really addressed like, hey, I feel anxious or I feel depressed. I think that it's definitely something that my family has had to learn. I really give a lot of credit to my mom. She would always just give me a Xanax anytime I would have a panic attack. For a funny kind of visual reference, like anytime I would have a panic attack, and I'd be like, for me personally, I cry inconsolably and I like hyperventilate, and I usually walk in a figure 8. I don't know why, it's a weird sense of control, I think. But so all I can think of in my mind, like looking back on those situations, is playing Sims, and like the house is burning down and like all the people are like flailing around like, wah! That was like my house anytime I would have a panic attack, and my mom just like didn't really know how to help. So she'd be like, okay, like just take this pill and you know, you'll feel really good in about like 10 minutes. And I would, but it wouldn't, like, yeah, I would be calm and I would be drugged up essentially, but it doesn't take away the trigger, and it doesn't get to the source of, okay, what is the cause of the panic? And so over time, she started researching, she started reading up on things. I remember one time we were out to eat and it just like came on me. Like, if you know anything about panic attacks or anxiety, you know that there is nothing worse than having a panic attack in public. So we were sitting down, we were at like a Chinese buffet or like a restaurant, and I just immediately got triggered and I started crying and really trying to hold myself together. And she just stayed so calm and so controlled and really like talked me through my breathing. Like, okay, we're gonna do our 4 square breathing, you know, inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. It really helped me to control. And so she really did her research on how to be a good support system for me at that time. And the rest of my family, I think, kind of followed suit and figuring out how to, and not even just for me, but for everybody else too, like how can we be there for you better and not just like shut you out, and how can we validate the feelings that you're feeling and not make you feel shut down or like your feelings don't matter. I kind of relate it to like a support system, or having even just 1 or 2 people that you can really reach out to in a time of crisis is like a sponsor, like an AA sponsor. So when like shit is really hitting the fan for you and you're having a meltdown, like someone that you can call on speed dial who you know is going to either pick up the phone or text you back pretty much right away and help talk you through all of your feelings and the things that you're going through. And also too, like even if you don't struggle with mental health in particular, if someone in your family does, like it is so important for you to rally behind that person and make them feel seen and heard, because a lot of like my trauma from my childhood was exactly that, like not feeling heard and like not feeling like my feelings mattered, or not feeling like not feeling like anyone was taking me seriously, which is what landed me in the behavioral health center. I've talked about finding a therapist before. Finding a good therapist is imperative. Like you have to have a good therapist to get through major life events and major trauma. And I've heard it said before by certain people like, oh, well, therapy doesn't work. Well, you're not going to the right one, obviously. It may take a couple times of, you know, going to different people before you feel like you really click with somebody. And it's not an immediate result either. Like you have to keep going consistently. You have to keep doing the soul work. For example, when I first moved here to Charlotte, I wanted to find a therapist, and I was going to somebody for a little while, but she just really wasn't giving me what I needed. She wasn't challenging me enough. And so I had to switch to somebody else who now I feel like is a really, really great fit for me. Group therapy is another really good form of, well, therapy. When I was in college, my roommate actually encouraged me to go to group therapy for eating disorders. She could see that I was really struggling with that at the time. At first I resisted it like a lot. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna go to this group therapy and hear people whine about their lives and whine about their problems, when really it's just, you know, a group of people all with one common denominator, which is like, this disease, which is what it is, this mental health illness is what is like currently destroying my health, it's destroying my mind, but we can all be in it together and talk about it together. And I enjoyed it so much, and I got like so much out of it and really learned so much through it. Going to group therapy is not, it's not just hearing about other people whine about their problems. It's learning to be open and talking about your struggles, and we are not meant to do those alone. So if you can find people who literally understand, I know exactly what you're going through. I know 100% what you're going through because I'm going through it too. There's so much community and there's so much power in that. And it's a way to connect too. Like I said earlier about like having a sponsor, you know, being able to text somebody who knows exactly what you're feeling in that moment is so, so, so important to have. Another thing that's really helped me over the years is journaling. I credit my journaling journey to my 5th grade teacher, and her name was Mrs. Koulianos at Croninger Elementary School. She was the absolute best teacher. She could see, I think, what was going on, that my home life was in a bit of shambles. And I remember one day she pulled me aside after class and she gave me this journal, and I still have it actually. And inside it said that writing rejuvenates the soul. And I have kept a journal every year since then. So, and I actually have like every single one of them. I think they're somewhere in that bookcase right there. I think that it's important that we get our thoughts out of our head, and sometimes just putting them on paper. I like to imagine them being stuck there. It's kind of like flypaper. It gets them like literally out of your mind, not like whirling around in your brain, and stuck and trapped on a piece of paper instead. There's something very freeing about that. You can write things and burn them immediately after, or you can write letters to somebody. There's so many different ways to journal or forms of writing that are really rejuvenating and healing for you emotionally. I want to talk about physical health. I think a big part of me feeling depressed in high school was, like, I was a dancer, but I was never really an athlete. So I had to figure out how to be athletic basically as an adult. As we all know, like, physical health, when you are working out or you go for a run or even just like a short power walk, you know, your serotonin gets pumping and you feel happier. By far, one of the most helpful things I ever did for myself was getting active and making a structured routine of going to the gym every single day. Well, about 4 to 5 times out of the week. You feel better mentally and you feel sexy and you feel better about yourself physically. So, like, it's a win-win. I want to talk a little bit about medication. As I talked about earlier, you know, I had some struggles with medication. I was extremely over-medicated, but there were certain times in my life where I know that I needed to be on something. I don't want to discourage anybody from getting on medication, but it's not a bad thing to taper yourself off either. So at this point in my life, I am medication free for about 2 years now. I can remember one time in particular though, I had a bout of depression. I wasn't showing up for work and I just was not taking care of myself, and my mom took notice and she intervened and she said, she's like, I made a doctor's appointment for you. We're gonna go get you on something, and like right now you're clearly not able to help yourself, so we're gonna go to the doctor together. And at that point in my life, I definitely needed something to just get me over that hump. I ended up transitioning off of it once I started feeling a little bit better and at a place where I felt like I could manage myself a little bit better. But I feel like medication is definitely stigmatized. This is just my personal opinion. I feel like there are some people with certain mental health diagnoses that in order to have a better quality of life, in order to function like a normal human being, medication is necessary, because sometimes there is a chemical imbalance and it's just genetics, it's just natural, and there's nothing we can physically do to change that. Sometimes there's no real amount of therapy that you can do to reverse a chemical imbalance. So you usually get into that with like bipolar or schizophrenia, and more severe forms of depression. So if you feel like you need to get on something, consult a psychiatrist, someone who is specifically like works to diagnose mental health issues. I put it in terms of this. You wouldn't go to a nail tech to get your hair colored. We both have a cosmetology license, but one is specialized in hair color and one is specialized in nail technician. So go to a doctor who is licensed and doctrinated in, you know, psychiatry if you are looking to get on medication. I feel like for me and my journey and myself personally, and for the vast majority of average human beings, sometimes things are just necessary to get you through a small season. It's normal to go through really low lows, and sometimes we need help with that. So don't hesitate to get on something if you feel like you're having a really hard time managing your emotions and your stress level. Don't feel stigmatized, don't feel inadequate, don't feel less than. It's normal and it's natural. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just life, and life is hard, and sometimes we need something to help us get through that. Another thing that really helped me was supplementing with vitamins. You can look this up on your own if you like, but I have gone to like mental health seminars and conferences in the past and have learned the wonders of the B vitamin. It's really, really, really incredible what certain vitamins that we are depleted of essentially can help do for your mental health. So a few that I really like to make sure that I have in my medicine cabinet are a variety of B vitamins, vitamin D, also magnesium and zinc are really good. Those are good for immune system too. Also ginkgo biloba, which is just a really fun one to say, and St. John's wort. Another thing that helped me get to where I am is having boundaries. I feel like that's something that's pretty widely talked about now, especially on social media, but learning to have boundaries with unhealthy people, even if those people are your family, whether that means cutting them off completely or whether that means learning to use correct verbiage that's going to help convey, like, I can't hold space for you right now, or I'm not at a place where I can take on the weight of what you're going through, so you know, I'm just gonna take a step back. Also having boundaries with work and with social media as well. I know personally social media takes a toll on me because my work depends on it. The constant pressure to perform and the pressure to put out content regularly is sometimes just unbearable. and it weighs on me a lot. I'm struggling even now to figure out how to have a boundary with social media and not giving into comparison of other artists and other pages that are vastly more successful than mine, even here on YouTube. So to close this video out, I want to leave you with some encouraging thoughts. A big one is to just give yourself grace. Everything that you're feeling, everything that you're going through it's warranted, it's valid, and it's normal. Be gentle with yourself. Know that nobody is perfect. You have no one to compare yourself to but the person that you were yesterday. And I want to just reiterate it one more time that you are in charge of your own life. So if you find yourself in a pit, if you find yourself in a place of despair, a place of addiction, a place of toxic relationships, if you are a victim of abuse, know that there is healing for you, that there is peace in your future, but nobody is going to do the soul work but you. You ultimately have to be the one to take control and to help yourself. And sometimes that takes every ounce of strength in your being to do. Sometimes it takes every cell in your body, but I promise you that the payoff is worth it. As always, if you guys have any questions about anything, I'm more than happy to answer any of those in the comments. Thank you guys for listening, for being willing to hear my story, and I hope that it encouraged you. I hope that you learned something, and I hope that you feel seen and loved and heard today. I just want to encourage you to be bold and to be strong. So I just pray that you get healing, that you feel loved, that you feel supported, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Leave in the comments your success stories too. If you have any other resources that you feel others might benefit from, please leave them in the comments. That would be really, really helpful. If you want, you can follow me on Instagram at Christy Brown Beauty. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.